On February 20th, 1943, on Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands, the tranquility of dawn was shattered by a cacophony of screams. 800 Japanese soldiers, driven by desperation, surged through the dense jungle foliage in a final, ferocious Banzai assault. Sergeant James McKinley, his hands firm on his standard-issue M1 Garand, watched as the enemy rapidly closed the gap, 50 yards, then 40, then a mere 30. The rifle, once a dominant force on European battlefields, now felt inadequate, its reload too slow, its reach too limited for the close-quarters combat that was about to unfold. Every Marine was acutely aware of the grim reality of a Banzai charge. Its rapid advance at 10 mm/h meant that once the enemy breached the defensive line, survival hinged more on chance than skill. Yet, on that fateful morning, McKinley's grip wasn't on his Garand. Instead, slung across his back was a weapon that the Marine Corps had almost relegated to history, a World War I trench gun, deemed by military experts as hopelessly obsolete for the demands of modern warfare. The 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a relic of the trench warfare of France from a quarter-century prior, hadn't seen serious action in decades. As the Japanese soldiers crashed through the final barrier of vegetation, McKinley raised the forgotten weapon of the Great War. The events that were about to unfold would compel the Marine Corps to undertake a complete overhaul of their jungle warfare doctrine. Stay with us to see the end of this video. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. McKinley had harbored doubts about the trench gun from the moment it was placed in his hands 3 weeks earlier. After months of relying on the M1 Garand's precision and extended range, the weapon felt alien. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson's decision to distribute the shotguns followed a review of casualty reports from previous Banzai encounters. However, McKinley was not alone in his apprehension. Compared to the smooth operation of their rifles, the pump-action mechanism seemed cumbersome, and the limited ammunition capacity, a mere 5 shells compared to the Garand's 8-round clip, felt like a significant reduction in firepower. The dawn of February 20th unfolded like many others on Guadalcanal. McKinley's squad had established a defensive perimeter along a ridge overlooking a narrow valley, thick with mahogany trees and dense undergrowth. The oppressive humidity hung heavy in the air, and the familiar sounds of the jungle, the chatter of birds, the rustling of leaves, the distant rumble of artillery, created a deceptive sense of normalcy. Private Harrison sat nearby, meticulously cleaning his assigned trench gun with the same care he devoted to his rifle. The 19-year-old from Ohio had adapted to the shotgun more quickly than most, but even he questioned whether 5 shells would suffice when the Japanese attacked. The first sign of impending danger arrived in the usual manner, with silence. The birds ceased their songs, and the insects fell quiet. McKinley, having spent 8 months in the Pacific, had learned to interpret these subtle signals, and he immediately alerted his men to prepare for contact. Corporal Daniels, positioned 20 yards to the left, raised his hand in acknowledgement and chambered a round in his trench gun. The metallic sound of the pump action seemed unnaturally loud in the sudden hush. Through his binoculars, McKinley detected movement in the tree line 400 yards down the slope. Individual figures emerged from the shadows, Japanese soldiers advancing with the disciplined precision that preceded every Banzai charge. He counted them, 50, then 70, then over 100. The enemy formation stretched across a front of nearly 200 yards, far wider than any charge his squad had previously encountered. Each soldier carried the traditional Arisaka rifle with a fixed bayonet, and their synchronized movement indicated that this would be one of the coordinated assaults that had breached American lines throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. McKinley's radio crackled with reports from adjacent positions. Similar formations were assembling along the entire ridgeline, indicating a coordinated attack involving at least 800 Japanese soldiers. The sheer numbers caused his stomach to clench. His 12-man squad would face approximately 60 charging enemies, odds that would have been manageable with proper fields of fire and sufficient ammunition. However, the dense jungle vegetation limited visibility to less than 50 yards in most directions, and the trench guns carried only 25 rounds per man, compared to the 80 rounds typically issued for M1 rifles. The charge commenced with the traditional battle cry that had instilled fear in American forces since Pearl Harbor. 800 voices screaming in unison created a sound that seemed to vibrate the very ground beneath them. McKinley observed through his field glasses as the Japanese formation surged forward, advancing at a practiced pace that brought them within effective range in less than 2 minutes. The enemy soldiers ran in loose formations, weaving between trees and utilizing the terrain to conceal their approach. Their training was evident in their spacing, designed to prevent concentrated fire from disrupting their momentum, and they moved with the desperate energy of men prepared to die. Harrison called out the range estimates as the charge closed the distance. 300 yards and closing fast, Sergeant. Despite his youth, the private's voice maintained a steady professionalism, a testament to the rapid maturation demanded by combat. McKinley could now discern individual faces, young men not much older than Harrison, their expressions contorted with the fanatical determination that made Banzai charges so effective against unprepared defenders. These were not merely desperate last stands. They were calculated tactical maneuvers designed to exploit American weaknesses in close combat. At 200 yards, McKinley issued the order to prepare for engagement. His men shifted positions behind fallen logs and natural depressions, each Marine performing a final check of his weapon. The trench guns felt inadequate against the approaching wave of bayonets and screaming voices. McKinley had witnessed Banzai charges before, and he knew that the critical moment would arrive when the enemy reached the 50-yard mark. At that distance, rifle accuracy became irrelevant, and survival depended on rapid, devastating firepower. Daniels had positioned himself at a natural choke point, where the terrain funneled the attacking force into a corridor less than 30 yards wide. The veteran corporal recognized the tactical advantage of this position, but he also understood that concentrated enemy fire would quickly find him once the shooting began. His trench gun held 5 shells, each loaded with 9 pellets, 45 projectiles that would spread in a cone roughly 10 feet wide at close range. Suddenly, the mathematics of engagement seemed more favorable than they had with his rifle. The enemy assault surged forward, closing the distance to a mere 100 yards, and McKinley could discern individual voices amidst the collective roar of the advancing troops. Japanese soldiers stumbled over exposed roots and crashed through the dense undergrowth, their relentless forward drive undeterred. Some carried satchel charges, primed to obliterate American fortifications, while others brandished traditional swords alongside their rifles. a deliberate tactic intended to sow psychological chaos. The effect was immediate, with several of McKinley's less seasoned Marines visibly shaken, their hands trembling as they clutched unfamiliar shotguns. As the charging wave reached 75 yards, the enemy formation began to compress, as the dense jungle terrain funneled them into predictable corridors of approach. McKinley recognized that the thick vegetation, initially perceived as a disadvantage, was now working to their benefit. The Japanese soldiers were constrained to advancing along specific paths, creating natural killing zones perfectly suited for his trench guns to dominate. He swiftly adjusted his tactical orders, tasking Harrison and 2 other Marines with covering the primary avenue of approach, while Daniels secured the secondary route. The final 50 yards dissolved in mere seconds. McKinley raised his trench gun, disengaging the safety and registering the unfamiliar weight distribution compared to his rifle. The weapon, initially dismissed as primitive during training exercises, was now poised to face its ultimate trial against an enemy tactic that had shattered American defenses across the Pacific. Everything he had learned about conventional warfare was about to be rendered inadequate, and his survival hinged entirely on a forgotten relic from the trenches of France. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The initial shot shattered McKinley's preconceived notions about modern warfare. As the lead Japanese soldier burst through the dense foliage at 40 yards, McKinley squeezed the trigger of his trench gun. The 12-gauge shell unleashed 9 lead pellets in a spreading pattern that struck not only his intended target, but also 2 soldiers running alongside him. All 3 men collapsed instantly, their charge abruptly halted by a weapon McKinley had previously dismissed as obsolete. The pump action mechanism cycled smoothly, despite the oppressive humidity, chambering a fresh shell faster than he could have reloaded his M1 Garand. Harrison unleashed a barrage of fire from his position near the main trail. The sound unlike anything the Marines had encountered in previous engagements. The sharp crack of rifle fire was supplanted by the thunderous boom of shotguns, each discharge reverberating through the jungle like artillery. The psychological impact on the charging Japanese soldiers was immediate and devastating. Men trained to endure rifle casualties found themselves facing a storm of scattered projectiles, rendering individual accuracy irrelevant. Harrison's second shot ripped through 4 soldiers clustered together, the pellets spreading across a cone nearly 15 feet wide at a range of 30 yards. The jungle environment, which had frustrated American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign, suddenly became their greatest tactical asset. Dense vegetation that deflected rifle bullets at long range posed no impediment to shotgun pellets at close quarters. Mahogany branches that deflected aimed shots merely scattered the spreading patterns of buckshot, creating ricochet effects that struck Japanese soldiers from unexpected angles. McKinley watched in astonishment as his third shot penetrated a screen of leaves and vines that would have completely stopped his rifle round, striking 2 enemies he could barely see through the foliage. Daniels had strategically positioned himself at the secondary approach, where the terrain created a natural funnel. His initial engagement occurred when 6 Japanese soldiers rounded a cluster of fallen trees at 25 yards. The veteran corporal fired twice in rapid succession, his pump-action shotgun cycling with practiced precision. The The shells he used were loaded with double buckshot, each pellet roughly the diameter of a .38 caliber bullet. At close range, the effect was catastrophic. The narrow confines of the jungle trail concentrated his fire pattern, and all 6 attackers fell within seconds. The speed of engagement fundamentally altered the nature of combat. McKinley's previous battles had demanded careful aim, breath control, and a precise trigger squeeze at ranges exceeding 100 yards. The trench gun eliminated those requirements entirely. At distances under 50 yards, pointing became more critical than aiming, and rapid fire superseded accuracy. His 4th shot was fired instinctively at a muzzle flash glimpsed through the dense undergrowth. The spreading pellets found their target despite vegetation that would have rendered rifle fire impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson had insisted on distributing 25 shells per man, a decision that had seemed wasteful during the initial briefings. McKinley now grasped the tactical rationale. Each shotgun shell contained multiple projectiles, effectively multiplying the firepower of every Marine. His 5-round magazine capacity translated to 45 individual projectiles, comparable to an entire 8-round rifle clip. The additional ammunition allowed sustained engagement without the careful conservation required for rifle cartridges. Harrison uncovered another advantage during his 6th shot. A Japanese soldier had sought cover behind a tree trunk that would have provided complete protection from rifle fire. The spreading pattern of buckshot curved around the obstacle, striking the enemy from angles that direct fire could never achieve. The 19-year-old private began employing this technique deliberately, firing at angles that sent pellets ricocheting through the jungle canopy to strike targets in seemingly impossible positions. The humidity that had plagued American equipment throughout the Solomon Islands campaign affected the trench guns in unexpected ways. While rifle barrels required constant cleaning to maintain accuracy, the shotgun's effectiveness actually increased in the dense, moisture-laden air. The atmospheric conditions that scattered rifle bullets at long range had minimal impact on buckshot patterns at close quarters. McKinley found his weapon functioning more reliably than his M1 Garand had during similar conditions on previous patrols. Corporal McKinley's initial skepticism about the trench guns quickly faded as the battle intensified. The shotguns proved far more effective than the rifles used on previous patrols. Corporal Daniels had rigorously practiced with the pump-action mechanism in the 3 weeks since receiving his weapon. His muscle memory now allowed him to cycle shells instinctively, maintaining continuous fire while shifting between positions. The veteran Marine had estimated that his sustained rate of fire approached 3 rounds per minute, significantly outpacing bolt-action rifles and rivaling semi-automatic weapons. More importantly, each round unleashed a devastating impact at the close ranges common in jungle combat. The distinctive sound of the shotguns created confusion among Japanese forces, who were accustomed to the familiar reports of American rifles. McKinley could hear shouted commands within the enemy ranks, but the orders seemed disorganized and uncertain. The attacking soldiers had been extensively trained to recognize and respond to M1 Garand fire, using the distinctive 8-round clip ejection to time their advances. The continuous boom of shotguns disrupted their tactical timing and eliminated the auditory cues that coordinated their assault. Stay with us as we delve deeper into this game-changing weapon and its impact on the battlefield. Don't miss the conclusion of this video. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what do you think about the effectiveness of the trench gun in jungle warfare? By his 10th shot, McKinley realized that the weapon he had reluctantly accepted was revolutionizing close-quarters combat. The trench gun's effectiveness in the jungle environment surpassed every prediction made by Marine Corps analysts. Dense vegetation that limited rifle engagement, ranges to under 50 yards, created ideal conditions for shotgun employment. The weapon that seemed primitive compared to modern rifles was, in fact, perfectly suited for the environment where American forces fought their most desperate battles. Harrison had expended 15 rounds and discovered that reloading under combat conditions required different techniques than rifle ammunition. Shotgun shells were larger and more awkward to handle, but the process was simpler than managing 8-round clips. The private developed a rhythm of firing 3 shots, topping off 2 shells, and continuing engagement. This technique maintained continuous firepower while ensuring his weapon never ran completely empty during critical moments. The Banzai charge that had seemed so overwhelming at 400 yards was fragmenting under the concentrated shotgun fire. Individual Japanese soldiers continued advancing with fanatical determination, but their coordinated formation had dissolved into scattered groups struggling through increasingly deadly terrain. McKinley's squad had discovered that conventional wisdom about infantry weapons was wrong. In the dense jungles of the Pacific, the outdated trench gun had become the most effective tool for stopping enemy assaults, transforming desperate last stands into controlled, defensive victories. The aftermath of the February 20th engagement provided Lieutenant Colonel Pearson with data that challenged every assumption about infantry weapon effectiveness in jungle warfare. McKinley's after-action report documented 23 confirmed enemy casualties from a 12-man squad armed with trench guns, compared to average Banzai charge results of 4 to 6 casualties per squad using standard rifles. The engagement duration had lasted 3 minutes and 40 seconds from first contact to enemy withdrawal, significantly shorter than the 8 to 12-minute firefights typical of rifle-based defenses. Most remarkably, Marine casualties totaled 0 dead and 2 lightly wounded, a reversal of the casualty ratios that had plagued American forces throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. Pearson immediately recognized the tactical implications of these numbers. Standard Marine doctrine called for rifle fire to commence at maximum effective range, typically 200 to 300 yards, in open terrain. Jungle conditions reduced this to 50 yards or less, creating engagement windows of 15 to 20 seconds before enemy forces reached American positions. The M1 Garand's 8-round capacity allowed experienced Marines to fire 6 to 7 aimed shots during this critical period, assuming perfect conditions and no mechanical failures. McKinley's squad had demonstrated the trench guns could deliver 20 to 25 effective shots per man during the same time frame, with each shot producing multiple projectile impacts. The operational analysis extended beyond simple firepower calculations. Pearson's staff reviewed ammunition consumption data from previous engagements, discovering that rifle-equipped squads typically expended 60 to 80 rounds per confirmed enemy casualty during Banzai charge encounters. McKinley's squad had achieved a ratio of 1-2 shotgun shells per casualty, with each shell containing 9 pellets. The effective ammunition-to-target ratio showed dramatic improvement, particularly significant given the logistical challenges of resupplying forward positions in dense jungle terrain. Corporal Daniels provided crucial insights into the weapon's performance under combat stress. His experience with both rifles and shotguns during the same engagement allowed direct comparison of ergonomic factors. The pump action mechanism proved more intuitive under extreme pressure than bolt manipulation or clip changes. Daniels reported that his muscle memory adapted to the shotgun's operation within the first 10 rounds, while rifle proficiency had required months of training to achieve similar reliability. The weapon's operation remained consistent despite the adrenaline surge and degradation of fine motor skills that accompanied close combat. Medical reports from the engagement revealed additional advantages of shotgun employment. Japanese soldiers wounded by rifle fire typically remained capable of continued attack for several seconds after being struck, often long enough to reach American positions with bayonets or satchel charges. Shotgun casualties showed immediate incapacitation in 93% of documented cases. Navy corpsmen attributed this to the multiple trauma channels created by scattered pellets, which disrupted nervous system function more effectively than single bullet wounds. In the arena of close-quarters combat, single bullet wounds often dictated the grim realities of survival. Harrison's meticulous recollection of reloading sequences under fire furnished invaluable tactical insight, shaping subsequent training regimens. The Marine, displaying remarkable composure, successfully reloaded his weapon 7 times during the heat of battle. He maintained relentless firepower by coordinating his ammunition changes with nearby Marines. His innovative technique of loading 2 shells after every 3rd shot prevented the weapon from complete depletion, while ensuring maximum sustained firepower. This strategy surpassed the conventional method of emptying the weapon before reloading, particularly crucial when confronting relentless human wave attacks that afforded no respite. The psychological impact of shotgun blasts emerged as an unforeseen force multiplier during post-battle interrogations of captured Japanese soldiers. Detainees revealed that the distinct sound of pump action cycling instilled panic within their ranks, as the weapon was associated with American law enforcement and gangster films prevalent in Japan prior to the war. The deafening report of 12-gauge shells at close range generated auditory shock waves that disrupted communication and coordination within attacking formations. Several prisoners vividly recounted the experience as encountering thunder guns that appeared to fire continuously without needing to reload. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Pearson's scrutiny of terrain characteristics elucidated why the trench gun excelled in the Pacific theater. The dense foliage typical of most combat zones created natural pathways, channeling attacking forces into predictable corridors. Shotgun patterns, expanding to roughly 10 feet in diameter at 30 yards, aligned perfectly with these terrain-defined kill zones. The weapon's effectiveness surprisingly augmented in jungle settings, defying conventional wisdom that prioritized rifle accuracy and range. Jungle warfare inadvertently fostered the ideal environment for shotgun deployment, despite the weapons being initially designed for trench warfare 25 years prior. The maintenance demands of trench guns in tropical climates presented unforeseen challenges for Marines and their equipment specialists. While rifle barrels necessitated daily cleaning to preserve accuracy, shotgun performance remained consistent, despite accumulated fouling. The larger bore diameter and reduced pressures associated with 12-gauge ammunition proved more resilient to humidity, mud, and debris that plagued smaller caliber weapons. Harrison noted that his weapon functioned reliably throughout the engagement, even after being submerged in muddy water during the initial positioning phase. The supply chain implications of widespread trench gun adoption posed both obstacles and opportunities. 12-gauge ammunition was considerably heavier than rifle cartridges, curtailing the number of rounds each Marine could carry. However, the enhanced effectiveness per round partially mitigated this drawback. Pearson calculated that a Marine equipped with 25 shotgun shells possessed equivalent firepower to a rifleman with 40 to 50 rounds, while maintaining a comparable total ammunition load. The diminished ammunition requirements also streamlined logistics for units operating far from established supply lines. Training protocols necessitated fundamental revision to integrate shotgun tactics into Marine doctrine. Traditional marksmanship emphasized precision, breath control, and single-shot accuracy at extended ranges. Shotgun deployment demanded rapid target acquisition, instinctive pointing, and a sustained rate of fire at close quarters. Daniels volunteered to devise training programs capable of preparing Marines for this tactical transition within the compressed timeframes available between combat operations. Intelligence gleaned from captured documents revealed that Japanese commanders had begun adapting their Banzai charge tactics to counter American rifle fire. Enemy formations had learned to exploit the 8-round capacity limitation of M1 rifles, timing their final assaults to coincide with reloading cycles. The continuous fire capability of pump-action shotguns negated this tactical advantage, compelling Japanese forces to develop entirely new approaches to close assault operations. By March 1st, Pearson had amassed sufficient data to advocate for immediate expansion of trench gun distribution throughout the 1st Marine Division. His report to higher command detailed ammunition consumption analyses, casualty ratio improvements, and tactical deployment recommendations. The weapon, once deemed obsolete by military planners for modern warfare, had proven itself the most effective tool for halting enemy charges in jungle conditions, fundamentally shifting the tactical balance in favor of defending American forces. The monsoon rains that commenced on March 15th exposed the first significant vulnerability in the trench gun's jungle performance. McKinley discovered this during a routine patrol when his weapon failed to eject a spent shell, rendering him temporarily defenseless. While Japanese snipers targeted his position, the pump-action mechanism that had functioned flawlessly during the February engagement now struggled against the persistent moisture that infiltrated every seal and crevice. Within 48 hours of continuous rainfall, half the shotguns in his squad were experiencing intermittent malfunctions that threatened to undermine their tactical advantage. Harrison found himself diagnosing mechanical failures that had never surfaced during training exercises. The steel components of the pump mechanism began exhibiting signs of corrosion despite regular cleaning, and the wooden stock started swelling from moisture absorption. His weapon jammed twice during a night ambush on March 18th, forcing him to switch to his backup sidearm while enemy forces advanced within grenade range. The reliability that had made the trench gun so effective was proving susceptible to environmental conditions that exceeded the weapon's original design parameters. Initial parameters for the trench gun's design were found lacking. Corporal Daniels took the initiative to make field modifications, which, though not in line with Marine Corps maintenance protocols, proved vital for continued operation. With limited resources and spare parts salvaged from broken weaponry, Daniels began dismantling shotguns to pinpoint the components most susceptible to the humid environment. The extractor was the most vulnerable to malfunctions, followed by the trigger group and the magazine tube spring. He also discovered that excessive lubrication worsened the issue, attracting debris and sand that clogged the moving parts. The technical hurdles were not limited to mechanical reliability. Ammunition performance also suffered. Shotgun shells kept in tropical conditions started to deteriorate within 2 weeks of the monsoon season's commencement. Despite their wax coating, the cardboard hulls absorbed moisture, leading to inconsistent chamber pressure and unpredictable pellet patterns. McKinley's squad experienced 3 catastrophic shell failures during a single engagement, with one round producing a weak report and pellets that barely traveled 15 yards. These ammunition failures occurred precisely when reliable firepower was most crucial for survival. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson faced a difficult decision that threatened the entire trench gun program. Reports from various units documented similar reliability issues, with malfunction rates reaching 23% during prolonged operations in wet conditions. The weapon that had revolutionized close-quarters combat was proving unreliable when Marines needed it most. Pearson's staff estimated that mechanical failures during enemy contact had already led to 4 Marine casualties that might have been avoided with functional weapons. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please comment where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Marines like Daniels developed improvised solutions that spread through informal networks, bypassing official channels. Techniques for waterproofing pump mechanisms used materials not intended for military use, like beeswax from local sources and petroleum products taken from vehicle maintenance supplies. These field expedients improved reliability, but introduced new problems with weapon standardization and maintenance. Each squad developed slightly different ways to keep their shotguns working, making centralized training and supply support more difficult. McKinley's efforts to maintain his weapon according to official procedures were inadequate for the jungle environment. The standard cleaning kit for rifle maintenance lacked tools appropriate for shotgun mechanisms, and the prescribed lubricants attracted moisture rather than repelling it. His weapon required complete disassembly and cleaning after every patrol, a time-consuming process that left Marines vulnerable when they should have been resting or preparing for upcoming operations. The maintenance burden was becoming a significant tactical liability. Harrison implemented a rotation system to keep at least half his squad's weapons functional at all times. Marines would alternate between 2 shotguns, allowing one weapon to dry while the other remained in service. This required doubling the number of weapons carried by each unit, creating logistical challenges for patrols operating far from established bases. The additional weight burden reduced ammunition capacity and mobility, partially offsetting the tactical advantages that had made trench guns so effective during initial engagements. The psychological impact of weapon malfunctions was as significant as the mechanical problems. Marines who had become confident in their shotgun stopping power now faced the possibility of equipment failure during critical moments. McKinley observed increased stress among his squad members, who began carrying additional backup weapons despite the added weight. The reliability issues were undermining the morale benefits that had accompanied the trench gun's initial success against Banzai charges. Ammunition supply problems compounded the mechanical difficulties facing shotgun-equipped units. The specialized nature of 12-gauge military ammunition meant that resupply operations required different logistics procedures than standard rifle cartridges. When shipments were delayed or damaged by weather, Marines found themselves rationing shells, while enemy activity continued at normal levels. McKinley's squad operated with reduced ammunition loads for 6 days during late March, forcing them to restrict engagement ranges and avoid patrols that might result in prolonged firefights. Daniels's unofficial role as the unit's technical expert expanded as other squads sought solutions to similar problems. The veteran corporal found himself conducting informal training sessions on field maintenance techniques, sharing knowledge that had never been codified in official manuals. His expertise became so valuable that Lieutenant Colonel Pearson began consulting him directly on equipment decisions, bypassing normal channels to access practical knowledge gained through combat experience. The environmental challenges facing trench guns highlighted broader issues with equipment adaptation for Pacific theater operations. Weapons designed for European conditions required extensive modification to function reliably in tropical climates. The humidity, temperature extremes, and corrosive salt air created problems that had not been anticipated during peacetime development and testing. McKinley's experience represented a microcosm of the adaptation challenges facing all American forces operating in unfamiliar environments. By the end of March, field reports indicated that properly maintained trench guns retained significant tactical advantages despite their reliability problems. Units that successfully adapted their maintenance procedures continued achieving superior results against Japanese charges compared to rifle-equipped forces. However, the weapon's effectiveness now depended heavily on the technical competence of individual Marines rather than standardized procedures that could be applied universally. This created disparities in performance between different units based on the experience and ingenuity of their personnel. The crisis forced Marine Corps leadership to choose between abandoning a tactically superior weapon system or accepting the operational complications required to maintain it under combat conditions. Under duress of combat operations, McKinley's unit had convincingly shown that trench shotguns could be a potent asset, provided they received adequate support. However, such support necessitated resources and specialized knowledge, which were not always readily accessible. The ultimate decision on whether this often overlooked weapon from the First World War would continue to serve American troops in the Pacific hinged on striking a balance between its effectiveness on the battlefield and the practicality of its logistical requirements. The dark volcanic sands of Iwo Jima presented a unique set of obstacles that transformed the trench shotgun's role, shifting it from a tool of jungle warfare to one more suited for urban combat. McKinley's boots made a crunching sound as he and his squad moved across the rough terrain toward the maze of Japanese bunkers that dominated the island's interior. The dense foliage that had characterized Pacific battles for the past 2 years was now replaced by a stark, alien landscape of sulfur vents, jagged rock formations, and concrete fortifications that seemed to rise directly from the earth. The tactical advantages that had made shotguns so valuable in jungle skirmishes would now need a complete reassessment in this unfamiliar setting. The altered conditions first became apparent during the landing on February 19, 1945. Harrison struggled to maintain his weapon as volcanic ash infiltrated every part, despite his best efforts to protect it. These fine particles proved to be even more damaging than the jungle's humidity, grinding against the moving parts and forming an abrasive paste when mixed with lubricants. When he tried to cycle the pump action after reaching the beach, he heard a grinding sound, which indicated possible damage to the extractor mechanism. The very weapon that had withstood months of tropical conditions was now being compromised by an environment for which no Marine had been prepared. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson's assessment of the Japanese defenses highlighted why trench shotguns could be even more valuable on Iwo Jima than they had been in the jungles. The enemy had shifted away from Banzai attacks, choosing instead to fortify their positions and funnel American advances through narrow pathways, barely wide enough for a single file of soldiers. These underground tunnels and reinforced bunkers created engagement distances of just 5 to 15 yards, ranges where the shotgun's effectiveness would be at its peak. The weapon initially designed for trench warfare in France was about to encounter conditions strikingly similar to its original purpose. Corporal Daniels spearheaded the first underground assault on March 2nd when his squad received the mission to clear a tunnel complex housing approximately 30 Japanese soldiers. The concrete passages were 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, dimensions that made maneuvering with rifles extremely challenging, while favoring the compact design of pump-action shotguns. Daniels carried 40 rounds of double-aught buckshot, specifically chosen for its ability to penetrate targets at close range. Each shell contained 12 pellets, capable of defeating light armor at point-blank range. The confined spaces amplified every aspect of using a shotgun, both good and bad. The deafening blast of 12-gauge shells in the concrete tunnels created acoustic shock waves that stunned enemy soldiers and disrupted their coordination. Daniels noted that Japanese soldiers often became disoriented after the initial shotgun blast, giving American forces crucial seconds to advance. However, these same acoustic effects proved almost unbearable for the attacking Marines, necessitating adjustments to standard assault protocols to prevent hearing damage among friendly troops. McKinley found that clearing bunkers required a different choice of ammunition compared to jungle engagements. Standard buckshot rounds proved inadequate against the reinforced concrete and steel plate barriers that Japanese engineers had incorporated into their defensive structures. His squad began using specialized breaching rounds loaded with hardened steel projectiles designed to penetrate fortified materials. These shells reduced the number of pellets from 9 to 6 per round, but provided the necessary penetration to engage enemies hiding behind substantial cover. The psychological impact of using shotguns proved particularly effective in underground combat. Japanese soldiers trapped in bunkers had no escape routes when American forces blocked tunnel entrances with concentrated fire. Harrison reported that enemy resistance often crumbled after the first few shotgun rounds, as defenders realized the futility of fighting in confined spaces against weapons that negated the need for individual marksmanship. The claustrophobic environment, which had initially favored Japanese defensive tactics, was transformed into a killing zone where American firepower reigned supreme. Ammunition consumption rates during bunker operations exceeded all previous estimates. McKinley's squad expended an average of 60 rounds per cleared position compared to 25 rounds per engagement during jungle operations. This increased consumption reflected both the intensity of close-quarters combat and the need to maintain constant suppressive fire while advancing through interconnected tunnel systems. Supply lines that had struggled to provide enough shotgun ammunition in the jungle now faced even greater challenges in supporting bunker clearing operations. Daniels developed specialized tactics for navigating Japanese tunnel networks, incorporating lessons learned from both jungle warfare and urban combat principles. His approach emphasized rapid movement between firing positions using shotgun patterns to clear multiple directions simultaneously. The experienced corporal discovered that ricocheting pellets in concrete passages often struck enemies who believed they were adequately protected, creating lethal effects that surpassed the weapon's intended capabilities. The medical challenges of treating shotgun wounds in underground environments complicated evacuation procedures and required changes to standard casualty care protocols. Navy corpsmen reported that blast effects in confined spaces created injuries unlike those seen in open terrain, with acoustic trauma becoming as significant as projectile wounds. The weapons that had proven so effective at stopping enemy attacks were also creating treatment challenges that strained medical resources. The combat experiences of soldiers like Harrison underscored the critical role of integrating diverse weaponry to achieve tactical superiority. Although shotguns were exceptionally effective in the confined spaces of close-quarters combat, their utility diminished when engaging adversaries at greater distances or attempting to breach robust fortifications. In response, Harrison's unit pioneered combined arms strategies, skillfully integrating rifles for accurate long-range fire with shotguns for the concluding stages of assaults. This approach amplified the strengths of each weapon while mitigating their respective weaknesses. The unique volcanic terrain presented a host of maintenance issues distinct from those encountered in jungle warfare, yet equally problematic. The presence of sulfurous compounds in the atmosphere dramatically accelerated the corrosion of metallic components, while abrasive volcanic ash hastened the wear of moving parts. McKinley's firearm necessitated a thorough cleaning regimen following each mission, and replacement parts became essential logistical items, requiring preferential distribution from support units. Intelligence sources revealed that Japanese commanders were actively modifying their defensive strategies within tunnel systems to specifically counteract the deployment of American shotguns. Enemy troops began utilizing extended tunnel lengths that surpassed the effective range of shotguns and incorporating obstacles designed to disrupt the spread of shotgun pellets. Such adaptations compelled American assault teams to devise novel countermeasures to regain their competitive edge in subterranean warfare. By March 15th, casualty data definitively showed that units equipped with shotguns experienced notably lower casualty rates during bunker clearing operations compared to those armed with rifles. McKinley's squad, for example, participated in 14 distinct tunnel assaults, suffering no fatalities and only 3 minor injuries. These statistics stood in stark contrast to the substantial casualties generally associated with attacks on fortified positions. The weapon that had fundamentally reshaped jungle warfare was proving equally revolutionary in the urban battlefield of Iwo Jima. The effectiveness of trench guns in bunker operations spurred a surge in demand that surpassed the available supply. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson was compelled to allocate the weapons sparingly among various units, each asserting the operational importance of their respective missions. This once overlooked relic of World War I had evolved into one of the most coveted weapons in the Pacific theater, its efficacy validated across a range of combat scenarios that its original creators had never anticipated. Stay with us. The conclusion of this analysis is just moments away. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what your thoughts are on the impact of specialized weaponry in combat scenarios.